Hi everyone, Danielle here. Today I have a card start to finish for you using a fun new product for the blog hop that we're having this week. All week we're pairing up with Little Dazzle, who produced these really cool craft metal sheets that you're going to see in my video below. So make sure you stop by each day. And they come in all sorts of colors, these craft metal sheets. I am going to be using 3 for my card today. The first color I'm going to use is this Perfect Peacock. It's a really beautiful turquoise color. I also am going to be using this really vibrant pink called Pucker Me Pink. And the last one I'm going to use is Golden Glimmer, which is a really nice shade of gold. And the back of all these sheets are actually silver. So you could always use the reverse side if you wanted to. Kind of nice 2 for 1. And it's a really, sturdy metal sheet. Thicker than a foil. Like kind of the same texture, but much thicker. I'm going to be using our Tiny Triangles die. And this tape is not a mistake. It's to help me stay in frame. I'm going to be using our Sparkle and Shine stamp set, just this Shine Bright Sentiment. And my love affair with gold and vellum continues, combined into one amazing product. This is actually vellum with gold stars by Studio Calico. And it just says patterned vellum on the paper. But I picked it up at Ellen Hudson a few days ago, so I will try to remember to link to that. I'm going to be using this great tool called a quick stick. It's perfect for small things like sequins, or in my case these little triangles. I have a standard A2 card base, and then I'm actually going to be really working on this single sheet of cardstock. This is 4 inches by 5 1/4, and that I will mount to my card base when I'm done. So the first thing I'm going to do is use our Tiny Triangles die to cut just a piece of white cardstock, and ta-da! That was fast, wasn't it? So I cut the white, and I'm actually going to cut 3 more, die cut 3 more pieces. I'm going to do 1 of each of the colors of the metal sheets. So 1 gold, 1 peacock, and 1 pink. And I'm actually not going to be using like the whole card. I'm just going to be using I'm going to be popping out the tiny little triangles and using them a little bit later on. And you can see they just pop out really easily, and the metal sheets cut so easily with in my Big Shot. I had no trouble at all. I didn't have to use a shim or anything. So what I'm going to do to get started is start layering. So I have my 4 inch by 5 1/4 piece of cardstock on the bottom there, and then I just have this like little rectangle of the vellum, and I'm trying to figure out where I want to put it and how big I want it to be. So I have 0 plan right now actually, which is typically how my card making goes. I kind of have an idea in my head, but it's not till I sit down and start working that it all comes together. So I'm actually going to fast forward through most of the video just to kind of speed it up. But what I'm doing here with the vellum is sometimes I like to have an unfinished look to things. So I'm just actually by hand kind of tearing some of that star vellum and getting it to a size that I like. And now I'm going to take a regular piece of vellum and do the same. I'm just going to figure out how I want it layered. I couldn't figure out if I wanted the stars on top or the bottom, but I thought the stars on top would be too busy. So I'm actually going to kind of tone down the pattern of the stars by using just a regular sheet of vellum. And I really like this vellum. I think I got this at Ellen too. I'll link to it. It's thin and it's not so opaque. You can still see through it, which I like because you can pick up a little bit of the stars through there. It doesn't totally block them out. So I did the same thing. I'm just ripping it by hand. Sometimes if there's a bigger chunk, I'll use my scissors just to kind of help speed up the process. And once I'm happy with the vellum, then I kind of see where I want to put the triangle die cut. And I'm going to use this wonderful adhesive. It has become my best friend. It's by Tombow. It is a vellum adhesive. It's clear and you can't see it at all, which is wonderful when you're using vellum. So I just put a bunch on, and I actually didn't go right up to the edge of the vellum because what I want to do is kind of adhere it down and then kind of peel up the edges just a little bit to kind of give the card some dimension. So you can see here I'm just going to kind of rotate the card around and go along the edges and just kind of fold up some of the vellum. I'm going to do the same thing with the white. Just kind of trim it up a little bit and then use the adhesive, if I can figure out which way to use it, And you can see it a little bit on the vellum, but it dries perfectly clear. You can't see it at all. So it's like a lifesaver when you're using vellum. You don't have to worry about putting embellishments over adhesives to cover them up. Doing the same thing, just kind of peeling up the edges. You can see, I'm trying to show you a little bit that you get a little bit of dimension. You can always fold them up a little bit more like I'm going to do here, just to make it a little bit more of a dramatic effect, and you can kind of see it there, how it just gives the card a little something so it's not so flat. I actually went ahead, I stepped away and I did some stitching along the sides, which is hard to pick up on the video, but when you see the photo of the card, it'll be pretty clear. And I'm just going to trim up the edges. I like to leave a little bit just to kind of get that shabby, messy look. But feel free to, cut it all the way down to the card base. And I'm just going to try and figure out where I want to put this triangle die cut. The tricky thing with this die cut is that there are all these little triangles, so you can't use a regular strip adhesive. So this to that has dots, and you can buy it in a bunch of brands. I know Scrapbook Adhesives makes one same way, and that's nice to use because the dots will only adhere to the solid surface. It won't block or cover up the little triangles. What I do find sometimes with those little dot adhesives is that they might hang over the edge just a little bit and kind of peek through, which kind of stinks because then it'll, if you're embossing, it'll pick up a little bit of the powder, or it'll pick up a little dirt or ink and you can see it. So I just kind of take my finger and go around the edges and make sure all of the adhesive is kind of pushed down on the back. So I'll put my die cut down now. Just going to kind of touch up the vellum, fold it up a little bit to give it that dimension, make it pop a little. And then clean off my workspace, and now comes the magic. I'm going to pull these triangle die cuts that I have in the 3 different colors, and I'm going to use my quick stick. It has this one end here which has this tacky stuff on the end. It's kind of like the poster board tacky stuff. I don't know if you remember, kind of work it. It's almost like a putty. And then it actually has this tool on the other end that pops out, and it has kind of a chisel side and then a pick, which is nice too. And so I'm just going to take the sticky side, and it just picks up the triangle so easily. And I'm going to use some multi-matte medium to adhere these. You could use glossy accents, but I am pretty bad with liquid adhesives, so I like to use the multi-matte medium so that if it were to overflow over the edges, I can kind of wipe it up and it's going to dry with a matte finish, not so glossy, so it won't be so apparent that I messed it up. And I'm just going to keep doing that, and like I said, I didn't really have a plan with this card or laying out these little triangles, so I just kind of I left the whole process in here just so you could see. I just kind of fool around, I put some down, I look at it, put a few more down. I had no plan as patterns or colors. I actually found this quite relaxing, just to kind of focus on these little triangles for a few minutes here. And you can do whatever you want. I chose not to fill in all of the triangle die cuts. I just kind of did a random pattern, and I thought it turned out pretty nice. I don't know. But like I said, you could definitely fill in the whole triangle die cut with the little foil pieces. And they were so easy to work with. They popped out really easily. The quick stick made this really simple. You could use tweezers too, but I think that would be a little harder. So I actually already went ahead and I stamped the Shine Bright onto just this little square, and I was just going to adhere it, but it was so much white on white that I decided to do a little bit of watercoloring with my favorite gold ink. So I have a little cup with some water, a paintbrush, and you can watercolor with this gold ink. So I just get a little bit on my brush, mix it with some water, excuse me. And what I want to see is, I want to see where I'm going to put the sentiment so that I can just kind of do some gold on the triangle base below it, just to kind of help the sentiment panel pop a little bit, because like I said, it was kind of a lot of white on white. So I'm painting. Now I had not planned on watercoloring, so I'm using regular cardstock. You need to be careful if you decide to do this. I should have used watercolor paper. If you're going to watercolor on regular cardstock, don't overwork the paint because your paper will start to pill, and nobody really wants pilly paper. So just be careful. You can't really sell, I actually did start to overwork one of the spots. You can't tell I stopped before it got too bad, thank goodness. But I'm just going kind of eyeballing it. I put the sentiment up there every now and then to see if I need more or less, you know, gold ink. And then I decided that the whole back of the card was just a little too blasé for me. So I did a little more watercoloring with the gold, just kind of around the edges and on the card base. And I think it just added a little more interest because sometimes when you're doing a clean and simple card, you can be a little too clean and simple, I think. So the gold um, just added a little something to it. I actually went ahead and stitched. I adhered my sentiment panel on, and then I stitched it with my sewing machine, which you'll see better in the picture. I'll take a close-up picture so you can see that. And that's kind of the finished product. So then I go to put it on my card and I think, well, this card base looks a little plain too. So why don't I just do some more watercoloring? Because I hadn't planned to do any. So I'm going to actually use the same gold ink and a little bit of water, and I'm just going to do a really light watercolor wash along the edges of the card. And because this ink pad is a pigment ink and it's so juicy, I actually stamped it. I couldn't find my craft mat. We moved and I haven't been able to find my craft mat. So I just put it on some paper and I'm going to mix it with some water. And like I said, I'm just going to really gently again, because like I said, I am not following any directions and I did not use watercolor paper for my card base either. So you don't want to overwork the paper because it'll start to pill. You don't want to get it too wet because it will start, you know, it'll start to warp, which you definitely don't want. So like I said, I'm just kind of, you know, mixing the water with some of the gold paint, and I didn't want it too dark, just a real faint coating right around the edges of the card. Since that's all you're going to see, that's all I did. I just did the edges. And I'm going to take the panel that I had made earlier, kind of eyeball it, see what I want, and then I'm going to use some adhesive. This is Scrapbook Adhesives. This is their permanent strips in their tape runner, and this is my favorite for a panel like this. I have a lot going on this panel. There's the stitching, there's the vellum, there's the foil. I did some watercoloring so the paper warped, you know, a hair. This adhesive is so strong, it'll definitely flatten that all out and make sure that it sticks really well. I have a little bit of extra thread, so I'm just actually going to fold that back behind the card and stick it to the adhesive. And then I'm just going to place it, center it as best I can on my card front. Now what I actually did do after I did this and adhered it down, the paper or the edges were a little warped from the water, so I actually just stuck it under a really heavy book, let it dry overnight, and it straightened itself out. So I hope you learned a little something and you like the craft metal sheets. Be sure to stop by every day this week for lots of inspiration, great cards, a lot of fun, and some giveaways. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you here tomorrow.